wrapping up my second to last semester right now. So I'll be finished in December of this year. So just for context, I started in fall 2018. So I'll do it in 7 semesters, and I'm wrapping up the 6th one now. Sure. So I come from a liberal arts background in undergraduate, and 3 years out, I was developing sort of like a general management skill set at work. And I realized that a lot of I'd never gotten any formal training in anything related to business or business application. And work is really great. Like where my company's been very supportive about it. A lot of people go back to get MBAs with company support. So all the stars kind of aligned in that way. And I also liked the ability that, right, like MBAs are very general. So you can get as technical or as non-technical as you want. But the base is always there. So as far as like going back to school, it seemed like a really good fit for where I was, where I'd been, kind of what I wanted to do. Yeah, definitely. So I would say that I agree. I definitely agree that it's a big part of business school, especially because for a lot of us, the MBA program is probably the last time we'll go to school, right? You might go for some certifications, but when you think about like getting together all these people from different backgrounds and industry backgrounds and like things like that, this will probably be the last time you'll have that kind of exposure. But what I found is that there are 2 kinds of people that I found at business school. One are people that are trying to move further up in their industry or company or career as it is, and others tend to be the people that are like, okay, I want to make a switch, so I need to like bolster up my resume for that. And I fall into the former camp, and as a result, like I focus less on networking. So I don't do, right, because like I'm happy in my company and I'm happy in my role and I want to keep progressing. So the one thing that I would tell people is that don't be like me, essentially, right? Even if you are in that first role, having a wider network is never going to be a bad thing, right? But it's not as natural to you when you are happy in your company and your role in your industry. So what you have to do, which I didn't do, is like put together like a plan before you go, right? And say like, okay, I want to, every new class I go to, I want to meet 2 new people. I want to catch up with them quarterly, or I want to catch up with, if they work near me, I want to do a monthly coffee or something like that. And that way you kind of make sure that it gets done, because I think especially now as the pandemic, it's kind of shown us that, having a wide network of people that you keep in touch with and that, you care about and care about you, and, like is never going to serve you wrong. I think it's definitely a little bit more work, right, than obviously not keeping up connections with these people. But I've learned over the past couple months that the connections that I have are really, they're kind of all I have, right? Whether they're career or family or friends or things like that. So definitely important. And if you fall into the camp where it doesn't come naturally to you, or you're not really looking to network outside of your company, make sure you show up with a plan and hold yourself accountable to it. Not to mention, like, when you're in a part-time program, I go to class with you guys at the end of the day when like I've already had a long day, right? It's 6 p.m. and I'm really tired, and I kind of just want to like keep my head above water. And it's really important in those times to stick to the plan, right? And also cut yourself a break, right? Maybe this was a particularly rough class and this was a particularly rough year for me and I met one person. That's fine, right? Let's just figure out how we can get back on track next semester. It's not, it's not a hard and fast rule. That's part of the fun of creating it yourself. Yeah, so one is as we discussed, I really enjoyed my intro to marketing class. It changed the way that I thought about a lot of things. And I can share one of those situations with you. So I had a professor, the professor that I had, kind of told us, he's like every semester there are people that think that marketing and market research doesn't work on them, right? And then, he gave this example of, so who here would only drive a fuel efficient, cost effective, no flash car, no matter how every other car was marketed them? And then like a bunch of people like me raise our hands, right? And we go, yeah, me. And then he goes, all right, out of those of you raising your hands, how many of you guys drive Honda Civics or Toyota Camrys? And it was like all of us, right? We all drove those cars. And he goes, those cars are made specifically because people like you exist. He goes, if the data didn't tell us that you were out there, no one would make the car. And that's the day that like my marketing brain kind of flipped on, and I was like, oh wow, okay, we live in that kind of world. And then the less creative one I would say is that I really like accounting. There's a very logical part of my brain that you hear, like there's a very logical part of my brain that like in my work and also in your personal life, right? We all have these things that we have to deal with like tax wise, that I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed getting to know the mechanics behind a lot of the things that we talk about, and that people, random terms that people throw out there, like, like depreciation and all this kind of stuff. I think about it almost like, you're in the Wizard of Oz and you look behind the curtain and what's there is your accounting professor, right? Like it all seems magical and you're like, this doesn't make a ton of sense. And then, he kind of explains it and it was a lot of fun. So those were my two, a little different, but they were great. The biggest challenge is probably stopping and making sure that you're learning things without just trying to get through it, right? Like we've all been in school, like undergrad, grad, whatever you've done, that there's tons of ways to get an A or to get a good grade or whatever you need to get reimbursed by your company or, whatever it might be. And I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, like this is the last time that a lot of us will be in school. I think it's really important to be honest with yourself and say like, all right, do I like, especially now when you're going to school at home, like, do you click through the video and make sure that you can do your homework, or like, do you watch it? And do you take notes and do you ask questions, and are you engaged? Or do you kind of like do the bare minimum? And I'll be honest, like sometimes when work is busy and family life is hectic and, you're doing part-time school, that little voice that tells you like, just get through it starts to win out. Because we're all human and I have no shame in saying that, but I think it's really important to remind yourself like, hey, like, I'm never going to get trained educationally again. I think that it's really important for me to like pay attention here. And, even, for me to get something tangible out of this that I can bring into my work, that I can bring into, my personal life, whatever it might be. So that's definitely been the hardest part for me. Cause there's a lot of moments where I'm like, just get through this one. Like, no, this probably won't be relevant to your job. And you have to kind of like ground yourself and say, no, let's do it right. Right. Yeah, so I'm a political junkie, and I listen to like all the politics podcasts that probably exist in the world. Some of them are, NPR politics podcasts. I listen to the Axe Files, and then there's also I just finished reading a book called Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein, which again has it tries to explain political polarization in the country. I'm gonna start reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's like the next one on my bedstand. So Eckhart Tolle is I've read some other stuff by him, and he's like a spiritual teacher and someone who tries to focus on essentially like the power of now says it all, right? He says the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. All we sort of control is like the here and now. There was one thing that I read with like an interview with him once that was really fascinating, and he says, like when you think about it, the past is just a collection of cells in your brain that are holding on to an imprint of something that used to exist. It has as much power over the here and now as you kind of choose to give it, right? Like that's kind of all it is. Email, LinkedIn, all that stuff works. Anything really. I'm pretty open. Yeah. So LinkedIn would be a great place to start, and then I can also shoot you my email, and you can
awesome.
Put it underneath the video or something, and be happy to chat with anyone.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll catch up soon, I hope.